So hello, it's me LETTERBOXD, and today we are going back to the best of Watchlist, and it is episode number 4. Today we have some bangers right here and few not so much, but you will see soon. So if you're not familiar with the concept yet, check the earlier episodes out. You will know then how this works. But now we are going straight to the movies. First up is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I went into this knowing nothing more than the fact that it has 3 billboards in it, so I was very open-minded for this movie. Very solid drama which has very serious topics to debate about politics, racism, and many things that were distributed to the screen effectively. The camera work was phenomenal and the color palettes made everything look amazing. The performances were outstanding, to say the least. I really understand why people are praising these actors and actresses so much. There was some real Oscar-worthy performances in this movie, and as we know, few of them won. Also, the character development was very solid quality-wise. We really could care about the characters on an emotional level. They really got the tone right. I was very entertained by this movie. It is very well made movie. Give it a go. Surprised the hell out of me positively. And I gave this movie 4 stars out of 5. Next up we have Paddington. I had no expectations for this, just wanted to see something interesting. So basically this young little bear named Paddington travels to London so he could find himself a home after his jungle was destroyed by what I assume a storm. He tries to find the scientist who visited their jungle many years ago and who then said that if any bear will want to visit London, they would be welcomed to his home. I know the concept is kinda dumb, but hey, it is supposed to be childish and silly because this movie is meant for children and childlike adults. The characters were treated very carefully and with a lot of dedication. Every character got some kind of reason to be part of this story, which was the most important thing to have when you need to use emotional stuff in it. Without the good development, we wouldn't have cared less about the characters and their motivations. Although the motivation behind the villain of this movie was really stupid, and the reason why she's trying to do what she's trying to do is really dumb. That's the only thing that kind of distracted me. It was too cheesy in some places, but it had still pretty funny moments and a compelling story to tell for us. I had fun time watching this. It is not any special, but still an average movie. Great for the kids though. And I gave this movie 3 stars out of 5. Next up we have The Invisible Guest. I went blind to this movie and the only thing I heard was that it is an awesome crime thriller overall. I wanted to experience it myself. Immediately from the first shots, I loved the tone already. It was dark and mysterious looking all the way. It got me very interested. So basically, this young businessman wakes up next to his lover, who is apparently dead by the beginning of the movie. He hires a famous lawyer to investigate how he became a primal suspect of the case. The backstory is very interesting. It builds up the intensity pretty well and keeps us guessing what really happened during the brutal murder. I love the way this movie was told with flashback sequences, and every now and then we were cut back to the interrogation with the lawyer. In the beginning we thought that this man was innocent, but then the new things started to pop up and revealed more disturbing reality. The truth. The storytelling itself was very good and it kept me on the edge of my seat because it did constantly surprise me with little twists which were changing the situation the whole time. That way they made sure that the story wouldn't be dull at any point and it will keep us guessing the outcome. One cover-up just exploded to one big mess after a few complications which made the story so much intriguing. The whole movie was on Spanish, and I must say that the language is so beautiful and compelling to listen. This movie was such a mindfuck that I couldn't handle the sudden changes of the situation at all. The ending really fucked me up. My mind was blown. I haven't seen more twisted movie in a while. I'm speechless. I gave this movie 4.5 stars out of 5. Next up we have another Spanish thriller, which is Boy Missing. After watching The Invisible Guest, I wanted to see another Spanish thriller. I got a suggestion of the movie from a friend of mine, and I liked the concept from the description itself. And as we know, Spanish thrillers have some mad twists, so I was very eager to see what this held in the stores for us. Kid of successful lawyer have been kidnapped, and he somehow escapes from there all bloody and traumatized. The investigation starts and they are trying to find out who did this crime and why. The whole situation changes constantly, and after some progress it just puts us back to the starting point of investigation and tells us no, it's not him, move on. The movie puts us in a very confusing situation where everything was left open and everything what happened before wasn't relevant anymore. From there it started to shape up to this more interesting and twisting thriller where we are questioning every little detail we get and try to figure out what is true in this story and what is not. While doing so, story keeps playing with our minds. The story escalates to very different part, and then the real mind bending starts. I mean, first half of the story was really good, but then it kinda lost its momentum when the first big twist happened in the middle of the movie, and it is now an average movie overall, and I gave this movie 2 stars out of 5. Next up we have very potential Veronica. So my Spanish movie streak is rising to 3 movies, and I wanted to see this so-called successful horror movie. So basically the story is about this teenage girl who tries out the Ouija board with her friends, and by the end of the session they forget to say goodbye to it because something creepy happens after that. The thing started to happen suddenly in Veronica's apartment, and she knew that all of that happens because of the board. The movie starts pretty easily. It doesn't lay on the jump scares much, which is always positive thing to see. Horror movie doesn't need just jump scares to be good. It needs a good story to back it up and some new methods to scare the audience. Unfortunately, this movie has an average story with some new methods, but none of them were even scary enough. Of course, the movie tries to be something edgy and new, but it just feels like the engine doesn't really start, at least in the right way, and the plot keeps on going with a half a speed till the end. The twist was very predictable, but it was solid though. Also, we didn't have enough of an emotional load there. I just couldn't care less for the Veronica at all, and even for the kids, at least not enough. Only thing that makes this movie watchable is the performances of the main protagonist and her sisters, who made a believable job on the screen. Also, the fact that it is based off a true story always makes it more intense. It just didn't do it for me, and I give this movie 1.5 stars out of 5. Next up we have Watchmen. Man, I have been looking for this day to come when I could finally get my hands on this movie and watch it for the first time. It's Zack Snyder's work, which I personally love. I was so excited to see this. Is it just me, or does Zack Snyder always start his movie with a music montage when the opening credits are rolling? If I remember correctly, the same thing happens in Batman v Superman and Justice League 2. They are so cool, but anyways, moving on. Watchmen is a story set in alternative 1985 where the world is sticking closer to the brink of nuclear war, and a plot to eliminate a band of ex-crime fighters instigated, but why and by whom? It is up to two of those ex-crime fighters to investigate the plot that seems to go beyond the unthinkable. The opening sequence was so epic. It set the tone for the rest of the movie perfectly. Dark and gritty theme spiced up with some awesome choreography for fighting sequence and some damn compelling slow-mos. The action is on top notch. Watchmen is bold, intriguing and captivating. The story is so interesting and large that I fell in love with it immediately. It is such a long movie, but I wasn't bored by it at any time. Actually, opposite. The way the story was distributed was so unique and great that I could say that this is easily one of the best comic book movies out there. Jackie Earle Haley's performance as Rorschach was exceptional. He's freaking nailed that role. The character development was solid. It had many characters, but they were treated very well overall. The costumes were on point and the whole color palette was just perfect. The music was on point, and also the fact that this movie was supposed to be impossible to adapt on a big screen makes it much more impressive and more perfect than it already is. Visually stunning movie, visual masterminds, Zack Snyder's finest work he has ever done. Fun little note in this movie that Rorschach sounded like a Batman and Night Owl was looking like a Batman. Also, I loved the DC Comics related Easter eggs which we got throughout the movie. This movie is pure underrated masterpiece. Such a dark story but so perfect. A perfect comic book movie. And I gave this movie full 5 stars out of 5. Next off we have Paranormal Activity. I remember how I watched this movie for the first time, and I literally was so paranoid afterwards that I couldn't be alone in my house for some time. The movie concentrates on this couple who started to experience some unexplainable things more and more. They are trying to catch all of the action to the camera and investigate the reason behind all of this. But it seems to be late for that already. This movie had something so special at the time that none of the horror movies had before. It was at the time bold and risky move to try out something new, and it really worked. The movie is thrilling and keeps you on the edge of the seat at some places, at least in the very end, where stuff is really getting intense. I didn't feel it as special as it was back then, but still was very entertained by it anyways. The ending was mad. That was the best part of the movie, honestly. I gave this movie 3 stars out of 5. Next up we have Memento. First time watching this Christopher Nolan's psychological thriller. I have heard great things about it, so I decided to give it a test run. Nolan is my favorite director after all. Story tells about this guy who has short-term memory loss problem which he is dealing with in daily basis, and he's constantly forgetting crucial things if he doesn't write every detail up somewhere. That makes the investigation of his wife's killer much more difficult. This movie's concept is very interesting by itself, but how this story was told was the ultimate thing that made this movie so unique and one of the kind. This is the early days of Christopher Nolan's work, and it was very interesting to see something different from him. But I must say that the editing choices were very confusing at times and threw me off of the story a few times because I couldn't keep up properly. But in the end we got an explanation why it was so confusing overall. Thrilling ride, and also puts you into very interesting thinking process when you try to guess the outcome and the catch of everything. Not the best Christopher Nolan, but still pretty entertaining, and I gave this movie 4 stars out of 5. Next up we have Drive. I have heard about this movie low-key and wasn't even interested at first, but after seeing Baby Driver I got very curious about it. So we have Ryan Gosling, Bryan Cranston and Baby Driver theme in one movie. This movie is telling a story about a car specialist who is working at days as an engineer and stunt driver for movies. But in the nights he has something more shady going on. So one time he has this one gig which is much more intense than his normal ones. Right off the bat, I must say that the opening sequence was explaining the tone of the movie pretty well, and it was pretty awesome. Ryan Gosling brought a great hard-working character to the screen, who is not only brave but also too risky with some of his choices. Bryan Cranston is not as much on the screen as Ryan, but I liked his character too. The movie itself was constructed pretty well. The gritty tone made it so much more believable and almost real life like overall. What comes to the criticism, I have to say that the music wasn't suited to the movie at all. I know people like the score of this movie, but I don't know, it kind of threw me off. It didn't feel like it's supposed to be for this movie, more like for sci-fi story. It's not relevant, but I just wasn't feeling the director's choice here. This movie was basically like R-rated Baby Driver with more darker tone. I didn't like this more than Baby Driver, but it was still very solid though. And I gave this movie 4 stars out of 5. So here was this week's Best of Watchlist, episode number 4, and we got some bunch of great movies and few not so much, but I hope you get something from it, and I'll hope to see you next week again. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video as always. Cheers.